Hello, my name is Jonathan Guthrie, and welcome to our Getting Started with Perfect series. Today we're going to demonstrate running the Turnstile SQLite demo and exploring the web routes and API, as well as getting our hands dirty with looking into a SQLite database and finding out about what makes a session tick. Turnstile is an authentication process built by Stormpath, modeled on Apache Shero. Perfect has adopted it as one of the authentication options for Perfect, with drivers for SQLite, MySQL, CouchDB, Postgres, and MongoDB. SQLite is a great teaching database tool as it's file-based and requires virtually no setup, and all Macs and most Linux systems come with SQLite as a standard. However, just remember we don't recommend using SQLite in larger scale production systems. Okay. First of all, if you haven't already got the Perfect Assistant application, visit perfect.org and click on the Assistant link. There, you will find the link to download the Perfect Assistant. Let's open the application and get started. On the Welcome screen, click on the Create New Project button. This will slide down a sheet which has two types of projects. Under the Examples, select the Perfect Turnstile with SQLite, then press Next. Use the Browse button to choose a location for your app and create a new folder for it. Note that back in the Perfect Assistant, the project name is the name of the folder that you chose. Uncheck the Integrate Linux build with the Xcode project, as we're not deploying to Linux in this video. Once you press Save, the Perfect Assistant will go ahead and create the project, downloading all the dependencies and creating your Xcode project file. Once complete, your project will also be listed in the Projects list on the left. It shows you the dependencies already in the project. Don't worry if you see things that you think should be there. The sub-dependencies are automatically included too. From here, you can also open the project directory in the Finder, a terminal window, or open the Xcode project. Okay, let's open the Xcode project. In Xcode, first let's organize our workspace a little, closing the right side Utilities pane, and then opening the Debug console space. Open the Sources directory and you will see a number of other dependencies that have been automatically added to our project. These have been added because they are sub-dependencies. Inside our project source directory is a main.swift file. This contains the code for running the demo. A few things to point out. On line 38, this is where we define the location of the SQLite database file. The SQLite connector.db property is set to ./authDB. Now the / tells us that it is at the surface of our working directory, and the authDB is the name of the SQLite database file. Because SQLite is a file-based database, we can put the file anywhere we want, but in this case we're telling the application to put it in the runtime working directory for ease of use and maintenance. You will also note that in the project navigator that we have a directory called webroot. This is where we are keeping the static assets like CSS, JavaScript, and other images, as well as mustache templates, which we will look at in another video in this series. Because we have files like the SQLite database and the webroot directory, we really need to tell Xcode where we want it to consider the working directory to be. In the Scheme drop-down, make sure that you select the terminal-looking black icon and make sure that the target is My Mac. Now, let's select Edit Scheme. In this window, you will see on the left items like Build, Run, Test, etc. Select Run. Now at the top, there are tabs Info, Arguments, Options, and Diagnostics. Let's select Options. In this tab, it has a bunch of configuration options, but the one we are interested in is the Working Directory option. Make sure this is checked, then click the Folder icon in the text entry area and navigate to your project's directory. In here you will see the Sources directory and the webroot. Once selected, press Close. We can now run the project. You can either press the triangle Run button or on the keyboard press Command R. Once it's done a build, Xcode executes the application and you will see in the lower right side console view the message that it has started the HTTP server on port 8181. So in a browser, let's go visit localhost port 8181. What we see is a welcome screen asking us to log in, as well as a few other informative links. Click the login link, but we haven't created an account yet, so we would actually need to click register as well. Enter a username and password. On submit, you will see that it has returned showing you that you have an ID, and at the top right it now says log out. So it looks like we've created an account and we're now logged in. Open up the developer tools for your browser. In Safari, this can be done by pressing Command Option I. Click on Storage and Cookies. You will see that we have a Turnstile session cookie. Let's go look at the database. Switch to Perfect Assistant and click the Open Project Directory button. In the Finder window that's opened, you will see a file that's called authDB. Now this corresponds to the file that we referenced in the project's main.swift. Back in the Perfect Assistant, click the Open Project Terminal button. This will launch the terminal with the working directory as our project. We can open the SQLite database by executing SQLite 3 authDB. Once we see the SQLite prompt, we can see the SQL schema by executing .schema. It will show us two tables, one that holds the users and one that holds the tokens. These tokens associate a browser session with a user. If you enter select star from users, you will see a very condensed looking row returned. It's not very human readable at first glance. However, you'll notice that the first chunk of text is the user ID that was shown in the browser after you have registered. Then there's a pipe character, the vertical line, and then your username. In my case, I just entered Jono. The next column is a mess of strange characters. This is actually our password we entered, but it's been encrypted. We must never store passwords or other sensitive information in plain text in a database. Okay, so now let's have a look at what's stored in the tokens table. Execute select star from tokens. This contains a value at the start that you hopefully notice is the same value that is of the cookie that I showed you earlier. The next value is the associated user ID from the user table. Next are the values that correspond to the date and time created, last updated or touched, and then the session idle time. A session is deemed to be expired or invalid if the difference between now and the last updated plus the idle time is greater than 0. So now we have seen the session cookie in the browser and that there is the association between that same value and your user ID. It might occur to you that this is indeed how authentication is linked. A session is simply a link between your interactions and the server. Each time a browser or JSON API talks to the server, it sends this user ID, often in the form of a cookie. The server can then know that it should link these interactions together. Now, if there is a user ID in the session, then the session is deemed to be authenticated and it can deliver user-specific information or privileges. Okay, so that's a wrap for this demo. For examples, please visit github.com/perfectexamples. There is an ever-growing library of examples and demo there. And of course, if you're looking for live help from our awesome community, join us on Slack via perfect.ly. Thanks for being with us today, and don't forget to say hi on Slack.